This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I have the pleasure of bringing to the mic for the 500th podcast of Halo Talks, Pete Moore. All right, thanks for coming on today. I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to have my trusted friend since 2000. We're the only guys running around the industry talking about EBITDA and talking about SaaS before the word SaaS. Al Nashirvani, my partner, the mayor of the Halo sector, and a board member of the HFA, among other accolades, including Miss Sass from Seattle. Give her a shout out. Al, take over the mic and hit me up, baby.
Thanks, Petey Mo. It's a pleasure to be here. I couldn't be more excited to do this with you. The 500th episode, 250 people have gone through your Halo Academy. You got Integrity Square, lots on your plate. I should point out that our good friend Dave Ganulin said that not many of these things make it past episode or make it past 6 months. You're on, 7 years now? Is that right?
7 years. March 31, 2017 was our inaugural podcast with my buddy Mike Pesca. And look, it's evolved in a number of different ways. You know, one, it was originally set up when we were selling a company. We wanted to basically create an audio teaser. So if I can't get a private equity firm to actually just listen to a 20 to 25-minute podcast, they're probably not going to be the one investing in the company. And as hard as it is to get people to read these days, I said, let's put it on audio. And then it kind of evolved into a lot of people coming to us that maybe we couldn't take on as a client, but we could say, hey, look, let me do a podcast, effectively an infomercial, send it out to friends and family, institutional investors, and let's just see what happens. Just get into traffic. So we kind of put a good housekeeping stamp of approval. And we had a lot of entrepreneurs that we don't want to say no to. And we were able to say yes by saying, hey, come on, Halo Talks. We'll cut up a nice little reel for you. We'll do a caricature of you like you've seen from our boy Market, cruelty-free cartoons. I got Noah in the background. I got Ganelin. We're slicing and dicing everything on Basecamp, and we've been putting up 2 episodes a week, basically for the last 6-7 years. We love doing it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know that it takes a lot to get on the cover of your book, which you published, 3 years ago? Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, you made it on the book because we knew that we were going to partner up at some point. So I figured if I put you on there, you can't say no to me.
That's
right. Which is how it worked out perfectly.
It worked. Well, let me ask you this. You've done 500 of these Halo Talks. And you've obviously, as you mentioned, you talked to a lot of entrepreneurs. You've talked to people in the tech sector of fitness, of Halo. You've talked to operators of gyms. Can you give us a couple of nuggets that you've picked up along the way, whether it's about business, best practice, the fitness industry in general?
Yeah, sure. I'd probably split it up into 3 buckets. So entrepreneurs, CEOs, and then like the private equity investing side.
Right.
What I've learned from entrepreneurs, the best entrepreneurs that start companies come from a personal frustration that they have figured out a way to solve themselves. And then it basically is turned into a business. But the DNA of the company and how it started was all about how can I make my life better, or how can I get information that I can't currently get? So if you think about your business, prior to be with the Square, but MotionSoft and ABC and all these groups that set up billing companies was basically because everyone was trying to run credit cards, out of their back office in a health club, and it just was so inefficient. So I feel like a lot of companies come out of frustrations when someone comes in and says, hey, I want to put aerial yoga together with, Soul Cycle. I'm like, well, did that solve something that I'm missing? Or we're just trying to jam things together. So that's the first thing is just the frustration. The second part is the best entrepreneurs are the ones that understand that they're doing an experiment. Okay. And if we go back to chemistry class back in the day, not every experiment comes out the way you want it to. Okay. So when people get investment and it's friends and family are basically betting on you. Okay. That's why they're called friends and family. Hopefully, if you lose their money, they're still your friends and family that you can talk to. And then once you prove out that experiment, then you get a Series A. Then if that experiment works, you get a Series B, C, D, E, F. People forget that the reason why they're lettered is because they're experiments. And I want more money to continue on with my experiment. And what I've also realized from a lot of entrepreneurs, and Paul Shallot probably said this the best, he said ABC, oh yeah, we're a 38-year overnight success. The businesses that are built from the ground up, not on like, different words and AI this and, SaaS that and CRM. It's like, what are you solving? How can I actually put the customer first? And then I'm just going to grow the business methodically and not let it go out of control. So that's what I've learned mostly from the entrepreneurs is that they understand I got to figure out the special sauce. I got to hire the right people. And then I got to be laser focused on what I'm solving for my customer. So I'd say that's the first bucket on the entrepreneur side. On the CEOs that we've come in contact with, and a lot of them are running big multi-unit franchisors. They're running big area development agreements. One of the takeaways, that was a great podcast with Terry Blachik, who has been an industry veteran and ran a very large Orange Theory platform. I said, how quickly can you grow? And he's like, look, Pete, I can't microwave a manager. Okay. I got a crock pot, a manager. And he's like, I'm not going to grow any quicker than I can crock pot. And as we did that podcast, he has a couple other cliches and sayings that he has. And the private equity firm that we ended up partnering with listened to the podcast before we got to their office for the management presentation. And the managing partner of the firm was quoting Terry within the first 15 minutes of the meeting. And that's when I knew we had a deal. So it's articulating the growth strategy. It's being very deliberate about how you're going to grow a company. We have people come in, sometimes they say, hey, I've got 10 locations. I'm going to go to 500. Can you help me get the money? I say, which one's the prototype? They say the 11th. Not a good answer, right? So the people that come in and deserve to get capital are the ones that have sat down, figured out, how does this special sauce, how does this engine work? And knows what the competition is, knows how they're different, and knows how to grow it. But they're very attention to detail, and they also, are methodical, and they're not in a rush. So I'd say that's another takeaway. On the PE side, just probably some of the best podcasts on that front. There's a guy, Pierre Lecomte, who's at TSG Consumer. He's made some very good investments. I said, what's your main role at TSG? He says, my main role is saying no, right? Because a bad investment is worse than two good investments. And he wants to basically stay down the fairway and actually do the work, look at the data, look at the management team, and then probability adjust, what's the likelihood of success. Another interesting thing that came out of the podcast on the PE side was Peter Brockway has been a mentor of mine for a long time. He said, look, when I get involved in a company, the company's like a movie, okay? And the movie is like halfway through. So I got to understand the first half of the movie and understand how it evolved in order for me to understand who's going to take it to the next level and why certain things are the way they are. So it's a lot of discipline on the private equity side. The guys that have patience communicate with their management teams and understand that we're partners and you're not renting capital for me and I don't work for you, but it's kind of a healthy mix in between. Those are the most successful investors. So those are some of the takeaways from the podcast over 500. We've got some funny stories along the way as well.
Let me ask you this. I know that besides Halo Talks, you've got Halo Academy and Integrity Square. You're involved in a couple of businesses, promotion involved, et cetera. Talk a little bit about the future of the fitness industry and where you think it's headed, whether it be on the operator side, on the tech side. Can you share with us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I haven't been more excited about the industry ever. And you and I have been in it now for, I guess, 23 years. I feel like the convergence of everything that's happening in the healthcare industry, entertainment, sports, it all kind of like directs into like diagonal lines into the health club. But maybe the health club operator doesn't understand how much they are in pole position to take advantage of it. You've got childhood diabetes right now. That could be eradicated. That's not genetic, right? So all these kids should be doing workouts in the club. So we got to bring the whole family in, okay, which adds memberships to the membership account. We got to look at obesity. And everybody thought that, there's going to be this purple pill or whatever is going to come out. And it's going to basically wipe out the need to work out. Well, it's actually the opposite, right? The GLP-1 and Ozempic, like you need to work out or else you're going to end up in an assisted living facility at 35, like I said at the trade show. So you actually need to do strength conditioning in order to make those drugs successful. I met with a guy who's in his late 60s. He's like, look, I dropped 28 pounds, but I also dropped 28 yards from my drive. He's like, my muscles are failing me. The pill that was supposed to kill the industry is actually supporting the industry. Yeah. And then you look at all these activities that people are participating in, and you say, look, pickleball, that is probably the leading driver to eradicate loneliness. And if you're a health club operator, maybe you don't have a pickleball court. But if you remember back in college, there were all these student-led organizations There's nobody that actually like from the school was, propped up to do that. They just set up, hey, we have a lacrosse team. Who has it? Oh, this guy's a senior. Like he runs a lacrosse team. It's a club team. There's no reason why health clubs can't basically appoint ambassadors within their membership base to say, hey, I love pickleball. Great. We're going to do pickleball workouts before and after, 3 or 4 days a week. You're going to stretch. You're going to learn how to do the movements. And then there's going to be a guy who's going to tell you where we're going to play. We'll give him some shirts from the club, just like we did in Little League back in the day. Maybe we'll get like Precore Matrix or something like that to put the logo on and pay for them. But everything is coming into the club, and then you can take it outside the club. And I feel like that's the biggest opportunity. And it's not going to be something where we get catapulted or something like leapfrogs us. Like we're there. You need the physical plan. So I think that's one of the main things that's important going forward. And I think workout recovery, if you're an expert on workouts, you have to be an expert on workout recovery. There's no reason why you're ceding that high premium dollar to a standalone location that's in your shopping center that planted their location to get your 500 members of traffic. So bring that in-house and then start to think about the workouts that people need and go into that database and fill it in. I say to people, you can't have artificial intelligence without intelligence. That doesn't mean I got my credit card and my birth date and my address. That's not intelligence. That's like basics. I want to know, how much weight did you hold when you were a kid, right? Did you shop at the Husky department at Sears? Do you not ever want to go back there? Do I need to get a wake-up call in the morning? Do I need someone to pick me up? Let's find out what all the triggers are. And then let's say, look, if you break up with me and you give up your membership, we broke up. I want to know what I did in order to not provide you value for 35 or 50 bucks. How am I not providing you at least that much in your life? I'm changing your life. So I'm pretty excited about where the industry's going. I think the only issue that we're going to have is irrational development. That's my biggest concern, that you have franchisees out there that are generating $1,000 a day, and you need to generate at least $2,000 a day. So whoever's selling those franchises, please stop, hit the pause button, look at what the special sauce is, re-engineer the model, and then sell the franchise so someone's successful. That's my only concern.
So we'll stay on that topic for a minute because there's been a lot of change that's happened in the industry, whether it's the OTF Anytime merger, changes at companies like Planet Fitness, changes at companies like Peloton, changes at companies like F45. I feel like there's a connection between what you just shared with regard to sort of this unmanaged hyper growth and some of these changes. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll tick through a list, and I don't want to look. Everyone's trying their hardest to build a successful business. The public markets are not a place for empathy and kindness. Okay, so if you're going to go public, you have to put out results every 90 days. Okay, and if you're a hyper growth company, or you think you're a hyper growth company, there's significant amount of stress on that business model to try and either sell franchises or to award more franchises and then basically have this backfill and pipeline that may one day turn into a royalty stream. Yeah. Okay, so if we look at F45 as an example, when that company went public, I was shocked. It was worth $1.5 billion at one point, okay? And not many people know that you could get a franchise disclosure document and you could go to a section called Item 19, and Item 19 has the financials either in summary or in year cohort or vintage of all the franchisees around the world. F45 had $33,000 of revenue a month, okay? Nobody lives on $33,000 a month on revenue, has a location, has staff, and actually can put money in their pocket and pay their debt. It's not possible. So people call me up saying oh, F45 is the next biggest thing. I'm like, it's not. It can't be the next biggest thing because Orange Theory is doing 80 to 100,000 a month, and these guys are doing 33,000, and the market is not actually doing the work to find out what the underlying business is. So they just say oh, F45 sold all these franchises. So who? And who are these people? Nobody's buying territory rights like private equity. It's just like a lot of trainers that say, hey, I'm going to graduate from CrossFit. Now I'm going to be running F45. Okay, that's like taking your least favorite ice cream and then your second least favorite ice cream, and graduating to that. So the concern with F45 is, they went public for several different reasons. I'm not going to name it now, but there were pressures because of the financial capitalization of the company.
Yep.
And when an investor wants to get out, the best way to get out at the highest valuation is in the public markets. Once you get into the public markets, if you miss earnings, or you don't have a good explanation, or you set the bar too high, you're destined to fail. And that company is a black eye on the industry. That's one. Exhibit two, Peloton. Amazing what they did during COVID. They got millions of people, motivated and connected, and probably saved millions of people's lives, I would say. However, they didn't manage the street at all. And they started to think that they were now the titan that could not fail, and that there was no competition that was going to catch up with them. And you and I know, with the televideo or with other private label or Wexer Media, like they weren't that far ahead on the technology side. And also the CEO would come out and say, we're going to get to 100 million members. Right? There's a 3 million. Okay. You can't telegraph that to the market and then not be able to follow up on that. And also, when you're in the public spotlight, you make mistakes. Every company makes mistakes. Okay. But when you're a public company, you make mistakes. It's like a commercial on national television, on CNBC. So they did a great job executing, but they did a poor job managing expectations. If I was running Peloton, and the stock was at $150, I would put out an alert to everyone that says, my stock is overvalued. There's no way I could catch up with that. I was trading at like $38,000 per bike. Okay. There's no way now. So it went up to, $50 billion. Now it's down to $3 of value. Right. So if you're running a public company, I think you have a moral obligation and a responsibility to not oversell your stock. And when it falls hard.
Yeah.
And that's about execution. New York sports clubs, Gold's Gym, those are basically casualties of a bad balance sheet. And what people need to realize is when private equity gets involved in companies, they put a lot of debt on those companies. And then they got to pay the debt back, or they're trying to get their money back by putting more debt on a company. So you're basically borrowing against the business. And anytime you borrow against the business, somebody's got to pay for that.
Right.
And that is the members and the employees. Because if I'm going to go pay interest payments, every dollar of interest payment is a dollar less that goes into CapEx at the club.
Right.
And that starts to build up. And then, I don't know, you probably were in a Bally's 15 years ago. Bally's was like a consumer finance company. I used to go walk a Bally's, and members would come up to me and say, hey, do you work at corporate? These 4 treadmills have been out for 7 years. Could you have somebody look at this? I felt like it was in my high school, locker room.
Yeah.
So bad balance sheets affect good businesses. So that's something to be aware of. And then when you take a look at what's going on with Expo right now, Club Pilates is a great business. Stretch Labs is a great business. The issue is that there are other poor performing franchises that are inside of that network that are selling a lot of franchises. But when you're on that treadmill and trying to get earnings out and trying to show results, I don't know how I'd feel, because the expectations were so high. I don't know if you could ever hit them. And it probably creates a lot of anxiety and fear on behalf of the management team.
Yeah.
And a company like that, and you know this as well as I do, if you got a good company, there's plenty of private equity that'll buy it. There's private equity guys buying companies and taking them private, like Mind Body. Just got taken private right before COVID. Thankfully, it would have gone down to $2 a share, right?
Yeah.
So there's enough private equity out there that you don't have to subject yourself to running a public company in the spotlight. Just keep it private, run it methodically, and don't get over your skis. And I think the public markets almost push people to go over their skis. And then when you do that, you crash hard. So that's going to be an unfortunate black eye in the industry. 2 other quick points. Planet Fitness just raised their pricing, which I think is great. So now everyone can say the race to the bottom is now officially over. There's no reason why you should get a membership for less than it costs to get a turkey wrap in New York City. So let's raise the prices. And then look, I think anytime in Orange Theory, I don't know all the machinations of that deal, but when we worked on an Orange Theory area developer, there was a study done, and 46% of the members of the Orange Theory down in Texas had a secondary membership at either a Gold's Gym or an EOS or or Planet. So they're basically, a hybrid studio. Participant or enthusiast, there's no reason why anytime, can't benefit from that and cross-sell. It's all about execution and, local co-op marketing. But that's where I see a big benefit of that business.
So I want to talk a little bit about the Square, Integrity Square, and the work that you've done there. And I've been fortunate enough to sit in the room with you while you're trying to get deals over the finish line. And one thing that I'm always sort of amazed at is your ability to come up with creative ways of closing deals. And it's amazing, really. So, you've done this for a long time. What's your general approach on getting deals closed? Because there's a lot of bankers out there, but there's only one PDMO.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Look, I got every day that I used to play soccer and go onto the field as a goalie, I'd have I get nervous, get anxiety because I'm so in it that I want to win it and I don't want to make any mistakes. And when I go into a deal, I feel the same way. Like somebody's basically giving me the ability to manage probably their largest asset that they have and probably that they'll ever have, right? So it's a very big responsibility. At the same time, I know that there are things that I can control and things that I can't control. And it drives me crazy. But what I always try and do in every deal is figure out how to stay optimistic. When somebody says we only have 3 buyers in the process, I say, well, we can only sell to 1, so we got 2 extra, right? I'm always looking at it from the positive side of it. I'm also trying to always look at it and say, how can I get the other side of the deal, whether I'm on the buy side or the sell side, how can I get them to play almost like an open game of Battleship with me, okay? And I do that in certain ways where I'm either, befriending them to the point where, hey, look, I'm not going to suck the last dollar out of you. That's not the goal. The goal is for you to have a good transaction, for my guys to get paid what they should get paid. So I'm not going to hustle you on a deal, and I'm going to be pretty transparent. And you'll know when I have good cards, when I have bad cards. But what I'm going to always do is try and say, how can I get this to the point where everyone's at least going to handshake and be happy and not just walk away and say, this was a waste of time. The open game of Battleship is extremely important. Okay, if I can get a buyer to actually show me their spreadsheet and their valuation sheet, and I can basically pick some holes in it, or I can optimize it, or I can start asking for things that are valuable, like a return of security deposits. Maybe there's gift card liabilities that you're going to assume. Maybe there's personal training that you're going to assume. Maybe there's some lease payments that are, deferred that you'll assume. So once I could get a rapport, and I know that the other party wants to get a deal closed, there's certain things that you can take from the edges that actually create a lot of value at the end and more than pay for our fee to do that. But I'm always trying to say, how can I get these parties to agree? What are the last few sticking points? Do I have to horse trade those? Or do I have leverage to get them? But I want everyone to leave a transaction, whether they're my client or on the counterparty, to say, this was a fair deal and everybody got what they deserved. And then you can set it up where you're rolling equity into a deal. You don't want to be in a position where the buyer feels like you took advantage of them. Right? So a lot of these are partnership deals. So I'm always trying to get somebody to share the information and let's say, let's work collaboratively to figure out how you can pay a fair price. My guys can take money off the table and make sure I'm listening the entire time of what my client wants and to make sure that they don't deviate from what they want versus what they think they want. So there was a deal with Brad Nesty, which is now EOS. 2 days before the deal was supposed to close, he was supposed to roll over equity into the NewCo. And the NewCo had a significant amount of debt on it because it's a leveraged buyout. So he called me up on a Friday. I think I was wearing a medieval knight suit to somebody's birthday party for some reason. And it wasn't a costume party. He calls me up and was like, Petey, I can't do the deal. It's too much debt. I lived through the financial crisis. So I'm going to call it off. I don't think you should call it off. Why don't you see if we just get everything you want? So we had a discussion with the eventual buyer. Eventual buyer ended up paying all cash, no rollover equity, covered the majority of the fees, and everybody got what they wanted. Now EOS has 17 clubs up to 90. So they're happy. Brad got his money off the table, didn't have to roll and run a leverage company. Employees were taken care of. And that was just listening and trying to figure out how can we get that other group to basically digest and retrade it. So
that's a great story. That's a great story. But tell me some of the crazy things, because dealing with entrepreneurs has got to be the most frustrating and rewarding things that, as an investment banker, one can do. But give us a couple of nuggets in our last couple of minutes here.
Yeah, so at the end of every deal, or about a week before the deal is supposed to close, the private equity firm, if they are employing the founder, they ask for a background check. Okay, so I've been doing this for 20 years now, so I try and get ahead of that. I have a very, very frank conversation, and I say, if there's anything I need to know it now. There's usually silence on the other side of the phone, and it could be anything from I got caught with fake ID, which I did back in the day. Accidentally gave it to like an undercover police officer, and it looks like it's more stain on my record than it really is. I've had guys got some trouble with the law. I had one guy who was had some insurance fraud. That was a big deal. I had one guy who changed his name because he was partnering with his dad. Then he changed it back. So on your credit background check, it looks like you have an alias. That's not good. I've had some people go into bankruptcy for divorce purposes and forgot to come out of bankruptcy and have a lot of big tax liens. That doesn't really bode well when a private equity firm is like, does this guy actually have access to a checking account? Maybe he should be restricted from that. There's been all sorts of background check issues. So if you have anything going on, tell your banker, because if I can explain it to somebody before they get the report, I've gotten deals over the finish line that should not have gotten done. Let's just put it that way. So background checks is big. At the end of a deal, sometimes the buyer gets a little giddy and puts out a press release a couple of days before the deal's actually closed. That is a breach of the confidentiality agreement. It also causes chaos with the seller. But it also creates a little bit of leverage on the seller's part. My part being look, you kind of like the cat out of the bag here. So I need these last 6 deal points. Sometimes it gets out that a deal's going to happen, but this was like a press release, and it went out to all the employees of a club chain that was buying a rival club chain, and some of the 1099 employees work for both companies. So that caused a little bit of fury. A couple other things that have been sticking points is when a landlord basically just won't do a lease assignment. Had one in Frankfurt. We've got a woman that we know who's an equity analyst who was in our Halo Academy. Just had a kid. I said, Tanya, you could do me a favor? Take an Uber. I'll pay for it. Go camp out in front of this guy's office in Frankfurt because we need this guy to sign a lease assignment. So it's almost like a global search to get documents to close. And some landlords just have their hand out. So that's something that, you got to think about when you're doing bricks and mortar deals. The other thing I've dealt with, you probably dealt with this, but there's this group of investors that are called independent sponsors. And they say, I'm independent. I don't have a fund. So it makes it easier for me to just go and put money together for every deal. Whereas other private equity firms have committed capital. Right. So if I'm a committed capital provider into Bain Capital, and my school has a $300 million commitment. If they do a deal with 10% of the fund, I got to send them $30 million, within the next 10 days to fund the transaction. Whereas an independent sponsor should really be known as a dependent sponsor because they're not independent because they actually need the money to get a deal done. So it's basically letting somebody lock up your deal and then go and try and hunt for the money, which, you kind of give up a lot of control and there's a lot of uncertainty in a deal. And then I would say, the other things are related to just the private equity firm and the management team not really being on the same page at closing. And there'll be some things that happen at closing, whether it's some economic or working capital adjustments. Maybe somebody doesn't get a title. Maybe somebody doesn't get the benefits that they had. And then the management team thinks oh, these guys are backing me. And the private equity firm's these guys are working for me. So you got to decide, lay it out and be look, you report to me now. I own your business. Or I'm a minority investor and I got negative controls. Well, negative controls are positive controls. You want to build a new location? I just have to get my consent unanimously, right? So you can't do shit, right? I got my hands locked. And these guys own 40% of the company. So one of the issues that have come up is like, hey, I don't like this deal at the end of the deal. It's like, well, you want to live with it? You want to take the money off the table? I usually have to say, look, what do you think was better next week? $10 million in your bank account or zero in your bank account?
Right.
Like, take the deal and the last dollar, just take the points. Yeah. So that's some of the learnings on that side.
Right. Let's go to our rapid fire questions. You ready?
Yeah, bro.
All right, here we go. What's your favorite workout?
Soul Cycle, and Soul Cycle.
How many have you done?
It's funny because it's the 500th podcast. I've got 605 Soul Cycles done, so I got to catch up.
Nice. All right. Morning, noon, or night workouts?
Aspirationally, I like to start the day with a workout at 6 a.m.
Okay.
Realistically, that's 50% of the time.
Yeah, you travel a lot. If you could give your Instagram or your LinkedIn to one person, and you know what, I'm going to switch this up a little bit. One person that you interviewed in these 500 Halo podcasts, who would it be?
Yeah, I'd probably give it to Terry Blachik, actually, because I really think his Tuesdays with Terry and the way he articulates strategy and team motivation, I would trust him with the accounts for a day. I trust Ganelin, obviously, since he's already got all the accounts for the day and every day. And there's a guy out of Charlotte who's a hoot. His name's Stu at WTF Talks, which is a gym motivational podcast. So I just like that he just hits it raw. So that's part of who I am.
Love it. Last question. If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
I'd probably be teaching, be a professor of finance or entrepreneurial something or other at probably like a Division II or Division III college. I could also maybe be like the assistant or like the head basketball coach. And I'd be understudying for the Les Mis, road show. One day more. So that's why that's one of the things on my bucket list. If I ever get on Les Mis, that would be nice. And also, be able to coach on the side of a basketball court wearing sweatpants with the breakaway jeans, breakaways, sweats.
I love it. Last question, Chinese or Japanese?
Always Chinese. I got my soup dumplings at the top of my list.
Love
it.
Petey Mo, congrats on 500 episodes. I couldn't be more proud to call you my partner and my friend. You've done an amazing job for this industry. You're a great spokesman for us. Keep it up.
Go Halo. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man. Awesome.